In the ongoing trade war between the US and China, some word is coming out that China is actually talking about banning Hollywood films from being shown in their country, something that supposedly is supposed to be pretty bad for the entertainment industry. But when you really dive into the numbers, I think it's actually going to be worse for China if they did this as opposed to just let it go. But I'll get more on that in a moment. But first, let's look at this article from the Hollywood Reporter that says what's going on with it. So China mulling ban on Hollywood film releases in response to Trump's tariffs report. Two widely followed Chinese public figures, one an editor for a state media outlet, the other the son of a former party chief, released identical outlines on Tuesday of countermeasures Chinese authorities are said to be considering in response to Trump's tariffs, and that's banning Hollywood productions from being shown in China. And when you scroll further down in the article, it does point out that while it is profitable to some extent, talking about recent movies, a Minecraft movie, for instance, it says it opened to $14.5 million in China, which was around 10% of its overseas gross. But look at the first part about this. The U.S. studios' earnings in China have declined drastically in recent years as local tastes have shifted away from Hollywood franchise spectacle towards the country's homegrown Chinese language blockbusters. But losing all access to the Chinese market could still ding the studio's bottom lines. I mean, yes, if you're going to lose a percentage, even if it's not a high percentage, like 10% of its global take, that seems like a significant amount. And I'm sure Hollywood studios would like to have that as opposed to not. But also look at this too. China committed to releasing 34 foreign films per year under revenue share terms, with overseas studios permitted to a 25% share of ticket sales. So just think about that for a second. A Minecraft movie made 10% of its overseas revenue from China, but they only get around 25% of that. In fact, that's just kind of normal for Hollywood, is they only get 25% of the box office that they're receiving in China. So it's really not a significant amount to them. But as I was saying at the start of this video, how I think this will actually be worse for China. And here's why, because I spent some time digging into this a little bit to try to figure out how much money we're talking about. So I found some figures for the year 2024, which I think is pretty good, the most recent year that's completed. And it says in 2024, the global box office revenue reached about $32.3 billion, a 3% decrease from 2023's $33.9 billion, reflecting recovery from production delays caused by the Hollywood strikes in 2023. Okay, so this is talking about Hollywood productions, or pretty much all American productions. $32.3 billion that it generated globally in the year 2024. Okay, so I was trying to think how much of that actually comes from China. So I found this other report here. Chinese box office revenues total 42.5 billion yuan in 2024. So it says 42.5 billion is around 5.91 billion US dollars. Domestic films contribute over 33.4 billion yuan, making up 78.68% of total. Okay, so out of the entire Chinese box office revenue that they generate, 78.68% of that comes from their own movies, and then the rest of it comes from foreign movies to them. So that can include Hollywood movies. Just for the sake of argument, because this paints it in the worst possible light for Hollywood, I'm just going to assume that every other movie that's shown in China outside of their own movies are from Hollywood movies, and that's what they're looking to ban right now. So that would be around a little over 21% of their total box office. So around 21% of $5.91 billion is roughly 1.26 billion US dollars. So that's what Hollywood stands to lose as a result of all this, is, or at least according to the numbers from 2024, they stand to lose 1.26 billion US dollars. Now, how bad is that? Because when you, like I said, they generated 32.3 billion US dollars in 2024, 1.26 of that comes from China. That would mean it's around 3.9% of their entire revenue came from China, which I'm not saying that's nothing, but it doesn't seem like it's a hugely significant amount. And then also going back to this Hollywood Reporter article when it says they only get 25% of the share. So 25% of 1.26 billion US dollars is roughly $315 million. And when you factor that in with the $32.3 billion that Hollywood made in 2024, that means it's around 0.9%. So let's just say 1% of the entire Hollywood revenue in 2024 came from China. That doesn't seem like a hugely significant amount to me. I mean, I'm sure Hollywood studios would prefer to have that extra 1% in revenue, but in the grand scheme of things, even though some movies, like it said in this article, Minecraft movie got 10% during its opening weekend of its overseas sales from China. But when the US is looking at this as a whole, it's really not a factor in all this. And then when you can go back into this other report where they're saying 5.91 billion US dollars or whatever, it's roughly 21% of their entire box office revenue comes from foreign movies, or like I said, for the sake of argument, US movies. That means they're going to be losing 21% of their box office revenue. Meanwhile, Hollywood is only going to be losing 1% of their box office revenue as a result of these tariffs that China is threatening to put an embargo on Hollywood movies as a result of all this. So when you really look at the numbers here, it's pretty much China threatening to cut off their nose to spite their face, which, like I said, it would hurt them more than it would hurt the US film industry, especially since it's been trending downward in China, where they're not really there. There was a time when they would try to pander to Chinese markets because they thought it was a lot more lucrative, because they're thinking like, well, 25% by itself isn't a lot, but when you have a huge market like that, it can bring in a significant amount of revenue. And also a lot of studios like to boast about it because they'll say like, oh, because it just gives them big numbers. Like they'll be like, oh, we made a whole lot of money overseas, but it's really taking China into consideration. Even though they don't keep that, it's just something that they can brag about because it makes it look like their box office revenue is a lot higher than what it is because it has those big numbers in China, even though they only get a fraction of it. So this is something that Hollywood, if it does go into effect, I'm sure they could deal with. It's not going to be that big of a deal for them. It's definitely not going to be that big of a deal for the US government if that means the film industry, a small section of the US revenue generated, is going to be removed, whereas China, it's going to be a lot worse for them as a result of all this. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Do you think China is going to follow through with this? Or do you think they're just trying to, I don't know, puff up their chest and make them seem as if they're not as weak as what they really are? Comment below, let me know. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.